Hello everyone, this is Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm, and you probably can guess the topic of today's discussion. I'm going to be talking about farmers markets, and if you're new to my channel, what you need to know is that I'm here in Zone 6AB in New Jersey, and while this will be my first year cut flower farming, obviously doing farmers markets or markets in general are not new to me. And the reason is because I run a side business called b.a.r.e Soaps where we sell soap, naturally given the name. And for the first few years, our main outlet of getting our name out and what we were doing was through markets. And when I say markets, I mean everything from craft fairs to farmers markets to what I would call these production type of artisan markets. So if you live in a major city, you might have heard of something called Renegade. So anything from your local fair that attracted like 30 to 50 people in a given day to this big artisan specialized type of fair that attracted thousands of people, right? And these are usually in a big city. So I set up shop in Brooklyn for one of those. And the reason why I want to talk about farmers markets is because I will be doing a series of farmers markets. So I have already signed up and gotten accepted into a local farmers market that is about 18 minutes away. I'll be doing 16 of them every other week throughout the season, and the season starts on May 1st. And there's a lot of things that really are transferable from the days of me selling soap at those markets to what I'm going to be doing this year. And I wanted to make sure that I took time this year to reflect on what those learnings were, just because, I mean, that was like over 5 years ago. And to this day, I have this like love-hate relationship with markets. If anything, I kind of have PTSD. Anyone who has done markets will tell you they're hard. I mean, they're hard work. So it's not like you go to the market and you just bring your inventory, your flowers, and you set up. No, like you've got to set up your canopy or tent. You've got to set up your tables. You're getting there sometimes at the crack of dawn. So, luckily for me this time around, like one of my criteria was I do not want to wake up at 5, 6 a.m., right? I want to wake up at a more reasonable time. So, one of the selling points for me was that this market setup time starts at 8:45. So, little things like that, which I just wanted to make sure that I thought about because I don't want to be burnt out. I want to have a good experience. And I have a very, very specific goal/intention for why I am doing a farmer's market this year. So that's what we're going to get into in this video. Now, one thing to establish here is that yes, flowers and soap are very different products. Soap is obviously not as perishable as flowers. I mean, soap has a shelf life, but it's typically a year. And at the end of the day, I am now selling my soap online. So I'm not going to sell my flowers online. I'm going to try to cultivate a local following, right? Which is why going to a farmer's market is a great way to build your customer base. But there is one similarity between soap and flowers that I think should be mentioned, and that is the fact that there is already a market for soap and flowers. I can't think of a single fair that I sold at where there was not another soap maker. And similar to a farmer's market, you're probably going to get someone else selling flowers, whether or not they're dedicated to selling flowers or they're selling vegetables and have flowers on the side. Now, the other good thing about both flowers and soap is that there's already a proven market for both. Flowers especially have been proven to be recession proof. During each of the past few recessions, we see people still buying cut flowers. Now, the question is, where are people buying cut flowers right now? Are they buying them at their grocery store, from their florist, from another booth at the farmer's market? At the end of the day, those are all customers that could be your customers, or you can even grow the pie of customers, meaning that there are people who might not have bought an arrangement before, but are going to buy a bouquet from you at the market or wherever it is, right? So the point being here is that when you sell a product that is not differentiated by the product itself, you really need to focus on what is your messaging, meaning what is your sales pitch when you have that prospective customer coming up to your booth, and what is your brand? Because flowers can be very emotional, right? Flowers can be very reminiscent, especially of someone's childhood and remembering like a grandmother growing flowers, right? So, what is your reason for growing flowers, and what is that story that you're going to tell them? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the evolution of our soap story based off of the feedback that we got at these craft fairs. Now, there are two main things that I want to talk about in this video. The first one is profitability. And if you're seeing this space right now, you can probably tell that markets are not really that profitable, or they weren't for us, right? But I got so much other value out of it that it's more than just about the money piece. And I'm hoping that from the lessons that I learned, my markets can be more profitable this year. But, that's definitely something that I want to cover. And then the second piece is just high level learnings that I had. So there are four main learnings that I know are completely transferable to when I sell flowers at the farmers market this year. Let's start first with profitability, because I feel like just giving you the numbers can help anchor my conversation later around the takeaways. And I have a spreadsheet where I track, this isn't all the markets that we did, but it is a good sampling of the markets that we did between 2013 and 2016. So I'm definitely missing some markets from 2015 on here, but I think that this is a good mix because it has markets where they were the very local small ones to the medium-sized ones and to the big production ones. And so, when you take a quick glance at this, you can see that, first of all, if it's red in the margin category, it means I lost money. So it was a negative margin. And you can also see that I've even put how far away some of these markets were. For the bigger markets, I was typically driving over an hour each way. Because that's where the crowds were, right? So I live in New Jersey. At that time, I was about, I would say, an hour to an hour and a half away from New York City. And so we did a lot of markets in Brooklyn. So Renegade and Bulletin on here are in Brooklyn. We also did Artisan Fleas for those who are familiar with that area. But then we did a bunch of markets that were more, I would say, local to New Jersey. So anywhere from a 15-minute drive to a 40-minute drive. And the reason why I bring up how far away a market is because driving to a market is time. And the further you live away, the earlier you obviously have to wake up. And a lot of that contributes to that burnout piece. But, let's take aside first this piece around how far away the market is and just look at the fees that I paid per market. So as I said earlier, we paid anywhere, it says here, from $20 for MCC all the way up to $225 for Bulletin for a single day. And the fees are important because obviously the higher the fee, the more you need to sell in order to make a profit. And you can see here, my sales for a particular craft fair really varied, but we're talking about craft fairs where there was one where we did $27 and it's because we got rained out. So I'm not going to count that. But the next one here is $57 in an area called Sparta, which is in North New Jersey. And I remember this fair because there's so little traffic. The fee to get into this fair was $60, and we didn't even make back our booth fee. So, never mind the amount of time we spent there, the gas we spent to drive there. At that time, that was a 1 hour drive, and just, sitting there and kind of like twiddling our thumbs because there wasn't enough volume of people coming, right? However, there is a really good lesson I learned from that craft fair, which I will talk about later. But I just want to give you a sense for the realistic numbers that I faced. And I was selling $5 bar soap at the time. So obviously that's a much lower price point than the bouquets I plan to sell at $20, right? So if you think about it, I need at least 4 bars sold to equate to 1 bouquet. So I do expect that to help. And I also expect the lower fee of the farmer's market to help with profitability. But you can see over here, there are quite a few markets where I really didn't make that much money. And even in some markets where it looks like, oh my God, I had stellar sales of like $400 or $600, my profit was only $200 something. The best one was $386. And in the profit category here, I am calculating the cost. The cost of making the soap. And that includes packaging, that includes the oils, all that stuff. I also included like credit card fees. So we use Square as our point of sale credit card swiping system. And that was it. So I didn't bake in labor. If I baked in labor, most of these fairs would have been negative ROI. And you know what? That's okay because I learned a lot, and that's the next part of what I want to talk about. So let's jump into these 4 lessons that I learned. The first lesson was pricing. Now, I mentioned that I sold my bar soaps at $5. And let's just say that fair after fair, because there was always another soap maker there, we were always the lowest priced bar soap. And I would say that we entered in with a lack of confidence, which I feel like a lot of you might be having right now. For example, you might be saying like, well, I've grown flowers before, but they were for personal use. Like, I just enjoy them. This is the first time I'm actually growing flowers to sell. I don't feel like that I'm an expert in growing. What if the quality doesn't stand up? I just haven't done this enough to feel confident to price at a price point that other people are pricing. Well, let me tell you, I was in those shoes and we did ourselves a disservice, because not only was it more difficult for us to sell an amount to make up for the booth fee and be profitable and therefore make our time worth it, we actually devalued our product. That craft fair where I said that we made only $57 and the booth fair was $60 was probably the best craft fair we ever had, because we had a fellow soap maker come up to us afterwards and say, ladies, your soap looks awesome, but I'm going to tell you right now that you are significantly underpricing your soap at $5 a bar. You should be pricing them at least $8 to $10. And the reason why you should be doing it is because you say your soap is all natural. You say it's made with essential oils. You say it's handmade using the cold process method. And you even have this plantable packaging on it. How are you only charging $5? Like, are you sure you're using all natural ingredients? And that was a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, oh my God, like, I am signaling from the price that I probably have a lower quality, if not inferior soap product to someone who is pricing it at $8. And I know that not everyone is going to look at it that way. You know, my dad is someone who is like, he shops based off of price, right? And he doesn't equate quality with price typically. But there are actually a lot of people out there who shop and make perceptions of your product based off of the price alone. So that was just such a really, really great learning for us. And it makes me go into this 2022 cut flower season, when I'm selling flowers at the farmer's market, determined to price my bouquets at a price point that I feel not only adequately covers my costs, allows me to make a profit, but it's also a price that I feel other people can sell at, especially those who have been doing it for years, right? So I'm going in exuding confidence, knowing that I have a great product. And honestly, what's the worst that can happen? Let's say the flowers die in the vase. I just give them a refund, right? Like, this isn't something that, like, you know, it's life or death, right? So just something to think about in terms of like, really, what do you have to lose? So all you have to lose is just the money that they paid you, right? Just refund them. The second lesson I want to talk about is this concept of validation. Now, I already talked about how soap and flowers are two products where you really don't need to validate that there's a market that exists out there. We know that there's already a market. Now, I think the validation exists in the nuances. So for example, in soap, what scents are most popular? I noticed that when people were picking up bars of soap, they really gravitated towards the lavender scents. So for example, if they picked up the lavender bar first, I knew that they were going to pick up other bars. I personally love citrus, but I found that people didn't really love citrus as much as I did. And so if someone first picked up the citrus bar, they might not smell the other bars, right? So that even influenced where I put what, because I could see patterns, right? If people are coming in, they're starting from left to right. And so I would make sure I had my best scents in the left spot. And then, you know, the less so popular scents in the right spot. And that even influenced going forward what scents we chose to keep, as well as if we were creating new bars, what scents we would gravitate towards. And it's not so different with flowers, right? Because flowers, you obviously have a scent component, like if you're having something like stock, but colors are more of the distinguishing factor for cut flower bouquets, right? So your customer who is walking to your booth at a farmer's market is probably going to expect a different type of color palette than someone who is a wedding client. And so I think that farmers markets are a really good testing ground for colors that work for someone who just wants a bouquet in their kitchen or on their dining table, right? And so I do eventually plan to do a CSA box. So I want to see what color combinations are most popular, and I want to see how many color combinations can I really create with the varieties that I'm currently growing and which ones are the most popular. All right, the third lesson is actually really, really important. And I think it's something that people don't think about. Really, sometimes people never end up thinking about it. And I think that this is what makes or breaks a business, especially if you're selling what I call a commoditized product, soap or flowers. The lesson is you can have too many messages. And when I say message, I mean in the world of marketing, there's something called brand positioning. Brand positioning is how are you positioning your brand? So let me give you an example. Coffee. There are so many types of coffee out there. You've got Folgers, you've got chocolate nuts, you've got Starbucks, and then you've got what they call third wave, which is this artisan type of bougie coffee, right? Folgers is priced very differently from a bag of Starbucks coffee to a bag of a specialty coffee, right? And the reason why they are able to sell at different price points is because they are catering to a different type of customer. And how do they cater to a different type of customer? Well, obviously the price speaks to the customer type, but it's also the messaging piece, right? So a specialty bag of coffee is going to highlight it is a single origin coffee. It was picked by Pablo, right? Of like in Costa Rica. Like it's going to give you a very personalized feel of where the beans come from. It's going to talk about how it was grown and all that good stuff, like the acidity, balance, all right. You're not going to get that for Folgers because Folgers uses a blend of coffee that's, sometimes overburnt, and you can tell I'm really into coffee. But the point that I'm trying to make is that Folgers has a very different message than a specialty coffee bag. And it's no different when you're selling flowers or soap. So what is the message that you are going to have? Like, what is your why? And so to go back to us selling soap, we actually started our company because we wanted to create a sustainable cash flow to fund nonprofit initiatives that we believed in. And the nonprofit initiative at the time was a rural village in Uganda that my co-founder had visited. And basically, they had just gotten fresh water through Westerners digging a well, but my co-founder was like, but there's no soap, right? So it's like they have fresh water, but no soap. So let's do something about it. And we're like, let's sell soap here and use the money for them to be able to buy soap in Uganda. So we had a very socially conscious type of mission that was the why for our company. So our first message was that we gave back with every single purchase. It was 20% back of your sales, so not profit, sales. And then the second piece was that it was all natural soap. And then the third piece was that it's plantable paper. And then the fourth message was that it was handmade. 4 messages. I'll never forget a marketing webinar that I attended where a person said, pretend that I have 5 balls and I'm going to throw all 5 balls to you. How many are you going to catch? You'll be lucky if you catch 1. Now, if I threw you 1 ball and told you to catch it, how likely are you going to catch it? You're probably going to catch it. Now, think about those balls as messages. If you're going to throw all these messages out at your potential customer, what is the likelihood of them remembering even a single message? It's 0. And I would say that we trotted along like this for a good 4 years before we realized we had too many messages. And the hilarious part is that our customers were actually telling us what our message should be, because the main draw of people buying our soap was the fact that it was planted in plantable packaging. When I say plantable packaging, I mean that we have seeds embedded into the paper, so they grow into 6 different types of wildflower. I mean, at that time, like no one else was doing that. Like we found a plantable paper supplier, but they were mostly doing like wedding cards, invitations, maybe business cards. No one thought to use it as packaging. And so our customers were like, oh my God, my mind is blown. This grows flowers. And be like, yeah, it grows flowers, but we give back with every single purchase. And no one cared about that piece, right? No matter how good our intentions were in terms of why we started the business. And the even funnier part is that at a certain point, we actually phased out our plantable packaging because it was so expensive. So a couple of years later after that, we did bring back our plantable packaging. And let me tell you, that is the number one reason why people still buy our products today online. We are during the height of COVID, where everyone was shopping online, we were close to 6-figure company. And I wouldn't have gotten there if I did not figure out why people could be drawn to buying our soap versus another bar soap, right? So there's obviously Dove out there, Dial, which is cheaper. There's also other great handmade soap out there that is high quality and all natural. So why do they choose to buy our soap? Well, it's because we are now sustainably oriented. We have a sustainable mission, and our packaging is one of the tenets of that message, right? So grow your own flowers. So I say this because sometimes we are so tunnel visioned in what we want our customers to understand the why behind what we're doing, but sometimes they're receiving a completely different message from us. Obviously, the plantable piece was in our messaging, but we didn't want it to be our first message. So just observe, pay attention to what your customers are telling you, and then pivot if you feel like that's what everyone is telling you, right? So why am I stuck on this other message? But the other takeaway here is you can have too many messages. Make sure you have one, maybe two messages at most, right? So what is that message you want that prospective customer to take away, whether or not they're going to buy your flowers or not? For me, I am going to focus on also the sustainability message. Now, I feel like that for a farmer's market, growing organic is table stakes. In fact, for our market, it is a requirement. So you can't even grow conventionally and sell at this market. So I'm not even going to mention that. Of course, I'll have it on the website. I might have it like in some sort of, sign, but that is not the message that's coming out of my mouth. The message that's going to come out of my mouth is these are locally grown flowers. I am literally 10 miles away from the market. So 10 miles away, I cut these flowers and I grew them from seed. Literally, obviously I grew them from seed months ago, but I cut them just a couple of days ago. They're going to be very different than store-bought flowers, which are flown thousands of miles, right? So again, like I have this sustainability theme that I personally believe in and that I'm passionate about communicating. And for me, it's actually less about selling the flowers, but more around selling that message around how can you live a more sustainable lifestyle, right? So I'm using flowers as a platform or a gateway to create that community locally to get people to think about, hey, like what are certain things that I can do that are easy to help me pursue a lower carbon footprint life. All right. So lesson number 3, setup matters. And, this should be no surprise to anyone, but obviously the more attractive your setup, the more successful you are going to be. When we first started out, we had basically just one table. And a part of it was because we just didn't have enough inventory to fill multiple tables. Typically, a booth size is a 10 by 10 booth size, which means if you really wanted to stretch it, you could probably put 3 folding tables in a U shape. It's not a lot of space, honestly, for you, and it's not a lot of space for the customer. So some more successful setups that I've seen are using 2 tables for an L shape, right? So remember, like you also want to be able to talk to the customer and you want to give the customer enough space to browse so that they don't feel like they're being pigeonholed into a corner once they come to see your booth. But that being said, I think that there are 2 main rules that people generally follow for a setup. The first is pile it high, meaning a better stocked booth is going to look better and it's going to give that social proof, right, that you have a lot and that there's a lot to choose from. Now, there's also some people out there who feel like if you show some level of scarcity, it also draws people in. But to be honest, that never worked for us. We found that the more that we brought, and if someone bought a few bars of soap, we would restock them. That was way better in attracting other people to come. Now, of course, if you have a line coming out of your booth, that's also even a better way of attracting people. The second thing is take advantage of tiers. So a flat table means that you can only put your products, so flowers here, you can only put them, on a flat surface, and there's really no layering or no visual depth when you do that. So what we would do is we would literally take cardboard boxes, turn them upside down, place a board over them, and then place the tablecloth over that to create like a tiered system. So now when you come to our table, you see, okay, I have these scents down here, and then I have more scents up here. You can do the same with flowers, right? You can put your smaller bouquets on the bottom tier, your bigger bouquets on the top tier, and it just makes it feel like that it's more lush, that you have more inventory. Even if you were to put the same amount of flowers on a flat piece or a flat surface, it would honestly look like you have more because there's layers. You can see that in some of these photos here that we experimented everything from changing the tablecloth to even the props to the shelving for the soap, right? So we did a lot of iterations to get to the eventual setup that we loved. The other thing from a setup perspective that I'm gonna do this time around, which I didn't do, is I'm gonna make a sign. So sometimes you'll see people have like a large banner that is strung across the back of their tent, or you might even see like a pop-up, like a stand-up type of stand. Either one works. The point is, what is your name and what is your tagline / what are you doing, right? Like, make it easy for people to know what your booth is from far away so that, you know, they don't have to come to your booth to find out. Because if you're at a market where there's a lot of vendors, sometimes people don't make it all the way to your booth, right? So how do you get someone to see what you're doing if they're from really far away, and for them to say like, oh, I was going to turn around, but maybe I'll check them out, right? So a sign runs up to like $100. It's totally worth doing. It's basically marketing, advertising. So to sum everything up, besides those takeaways that I just talked about, I think that, you know, for me, one of the main, I guess, worries that I have with this market is not the fact, can I grow flowers? It's more around in the beginning month or in the beginning weeks of May. So my first market starts on May 1st. What am I going to have to sell, right? Because at that point, you're not going to have a lot of stems. And I wasn't prepared, or I didn't think I was going to start a cut flower farm back in October. So I only have like 50 bulbs in containers right now for my enjoyment for tulips. And so that's not going to be enough for that. So it makes me think like, well, I need something to sell. I need something to pile high. Like maybe it's going to be seedlings. Maybe it's going to be, you know, I don't know, like planters with flowers for Mother's Day. So a bit of TBD on that piece, but I am thinking about how much do I need to produce to make a booth look full? Is 50 bouquets enough? I think it is. And just in general, you know, what are the next steps I need to do in order to get myself ready for a farmer's market? So in the next coming weeks, I am going to be preparing, ordering the stamp for, you know, to stamp the sleeves for the bouquets. I'm going to be ordering the signage that I was talking about, and I'm going to be thinking about my setup. So I will have a follow-up video to document that process. But right now, I think this is a good time to publish this video because I know that the season is still early. You might be thinking about doing a farmer's market or you might not. And if you are thinking about it here, hopefully this video has helped. So if it did, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and let me know in the comments if you have any other questions about farmers markets. I will see you next time.